This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Have you been sitting on an amazing idea for months or even years? Are you convinced that you have the next $1 million or $1 billion business plan? You just need that step. You just need that push. You just need that sign that now is the time to move forward. Well, here's your sign as we present a very special edition of the Real Talk Roundtable. It's the Founders Table. Today on the show, we're going to talk about business. We're going to talk about innovation. We'll talk about networking. We're going to be talking to three founders, business leaders in their own right, three different industries that are making a big impact in their space. And as I'm sure they'll tell us, they're just getting started. We'll find out about the hurdles that they've overcome. We'll find out about how they've stared challenges down, how they've made progress, how they've made an idea viable, turning that into a profitable venture in three different areas. This conversation today is made possible by Alberta's top real estate school. That's Rello. You can find them online at rello.ca. We've been talking all week about that amazing testimonial we received from JR, who's selling real estate in northern Alberta. JR went with another real estate school, another option, and ended up failing a couple exams, trying to get certified to practice. Couldn't even do it. Just didn't feel prepared. JR heard us talking about Rello on Real Talk. They signed up. Wouldn't you know it? After talking to Rello's expert instructors, JR wrote the exam for the third time and passed with flying colors. We love hearing about stories like that. Everybody loves Rello because they have high exam pass rates. They've got the tutorial content that helps people actually understand what's coming at them, and flexible online learning that's guaranteed to fit your schedule. You can check out rello.ca. That's RELO.ca for more. Don't forget the promo code Ryan100 knocks $100 off both the Alberta residential and commercial real estate bundles. That's Ryan100, all one word, when you get started at rello.ca. On days like this, I always feel insignificant and insufficient as we welcome three brilliant people to the Real Talk Roundtable. It's my pleasure to say hello to Sarah Harper, who's the CEO of My Fertility Labs. Jolene Ali is the CEO of Gummy Nutrition Lab. And Jean Bruce Koua is the co-founder of Elev Homes. Welcome to Real Talk.
Thanks, Ryan.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, man. I mean, all three of you are in spaces that are fascinating. We talked to a documentary filmmaker a while ago about endometriosis, and then that led to conversations about fertility, and this is your space, Sarah. How did you get started? What was kind of the, oh my gosh, I was going to say, what was the birthplace of My Fertility Labs? No pun intended. How did it get started?
So that's a really great question, and it's really quite close to my heart. So my story started about 2 years ago now, and I actually went through my first miscarriage, and then after that I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. And so I was actually getting treatment for my hypothyroidism, but then after getting pregnant a second time, my doctor told me, you're actually experiencing your second miscarriage in a row. And I asked them, can you do anything to prevent this? They told me no. Making it a shorter story, I went home. I wasn't okay with that. I called around, and finally a doctor was able to help me and to balance my hormones. And they were able to better treat my hypothyroidism to get my levels not just normal, but optimal. And because of that care, I carried that pregnancy to term. I now have a beautiful 1-year-old daughter today.
That's incredible. So this is extremely personal for you.
It's incredibly personal, and I do count myself very blessed. A lot of people undergoing fertility challenges, have been trying for 5 years and they haven't yet gotten a baby at the end of it. But really that just started this hunger to dig into what are the problems with the healthcare system today. And the biggest problem we face is that women have to wait 6 months to a year for treatment. And even after that point, their options are so limited. It's usually just IVF, which is 10 grand a cycle or more.
Probably
so,
minimum, right?
Minimum. And so like I've had friends skip out on their weddings to fund IVF treatments. So ultimately we need a better solution. We need an affordable solution. And we're going to work with the government even to get this care funded, because ultimately this is a reproductive health right. And it should be covered.
I'll let people know, and we're going to be posting a ton of information in the show notes on YouTube and on the podcast, because obviously I know that this is going to create interest in this audience. I'll let you know you can check out what Sarah and her team are doing at myfertilitylabs.com. So this is a fairly new business venture for you.
So it is a fairly new business venture, but I do have over 8 years of startup experience.
Okay.
And that was in a health tech company. So I've really been able to leverage both my connections and my background knowledge of startups to help this company grow, I think, quite quickly. So we're actually looking to launch our app in about 6 months' time. So we are moving quite quickly, but the reason why is because we know that people are struggling every month. It's causing a lot of stress and undue hardship. And so we're looking to get that care to them as soon as possible.
I just want to say, for people that are going to be listening to this on the podcast, every time you talk about this, you smile. Like, you can tell that you truly care about what you're doing here.
I really do. Recently, there's something called Spark Type, and it's how you lead your company. And I recommend, if you're a founder, to look up Spark Type, and it tells you basically, based on your personality, this is how you should lead people. And so for me, I'm very cause driven. Ultimately, like, there's different types, and some people are warriors, and they really lead with a different method, but I'm really very cause driven, so I try to lead with that.
Very cool. I'm checking out sparktype.com right now. They've got that assessment that people can. I got to do this. I got to do this right after we do the show. Jean Bruce, co-founder of Elev Homes.
Yes, sir.
If you talk to Canadians, if you poll Canadians, I'm not going to tell you anything you don't already know. Right now, when it comes to Canadians, not just political priorities, but priorities in general, Canada's housing crunch, housing affordability is like at the top of many people's lists. It's top 3 on most people's lists.
Yeah.
Tell us what you're doing at Elev Homes.
So at Elev, what we're doing is we're actually solving the housing crisis for students. And so essentially the whole process of going through the process of looking for housing, finding housing, and living off campus has sort of like been streamlined and brought to students under one app. And pretty much where it started was a personal experience, actually, of mine. And it started over 5 years ago when I first came to Canada. So I came here as an international student to pursue my studies at the University of Alberta. And I remember when I got accepted into university, it was in February, and I was supposed to be in Canada by August. So from February to August, now, before I even get to that, I'm pretty sure everyone here knows that international student fees are currently through the roof. And as international students, I couldn't necessarily afford to stay on campus. And so I had to find a place to stay off campus. And so I'm not from Canada, I'm an international student. And from February till August, every day I was on all the platforms just looking for a place to stay. And I was just applying and just like reaching out to different potential landlords on all the different platforms. And I still couldn't find a place. And I remember even when I came here, I had to spend a couple of days in a hotel because I still had to find a place.
And that's not cheap.
And that wasn't cheap, right? Exactly. And so I had to spend a few days at a hotel, and I found a place. But what happened was, it was a nice place. The issue was, it was also my first time in Canada. And I had never been in Canada. It was my first time away from my family, my first time like navigating the whole process. And coming from a country where like the all year round is 30 degrees to experience like minus 30, this is not a fun, like it wasn't really the best experience, right? And so I had to go through that process, and after talking to other international students that went through similar processes, we figured there had to be a better way of doing things. And so we came together and we sort of like decided to work on Elev.
That's amazing. And so you're specifically honing in on the international student experience, or is this something ultimately that you could see become a housing resource for post-secondary students across the country, regardless of their situation?
Exactly. Yeah. Post-secondary.
Why limit your potential, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So we're just going for all the different students that are looking to stay off campus. So just like even looking for housing in general, we want to help them as much as possible throughout that process. Because one thing that we realize is that when you're looking for housing, you can tap onto the other platforms, but what happens is those platforms only help until you find a place. But the real challenge happens once you find that place. And so navigating the whole like living with other people, living with your landlord, being able to like pay rent and like everything, or like even like maintaining the property, they don't teach you that. And I haven't had the opportunity to learn that. So I had to learn that by myself. And we figured many students go through that challenge to find housing to live off campus, but they also have to attend classes, and there's like the stress that comes from classes, the stress that comes with like paying tuition and the affordability that you were mentioning earlier. And so we really want to take all that stress away from them so that they can focus on what they're here to do, which is achieve academic success.
I'm checking out your website, elevhomes.ca. That's ELEV homes.ca, and it's a really interesting resource. It looks like you're kind of, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, like you're describing, you're guiding young adults in most circumstances, I would guess, through some of the early stage stuff that represents real life, roommate matching, dealing with landlords. Look at this. What is this? I've never seen this on a website before. Life happens protection.
Yeah.
A late rent payment, no worries. You provide a safety net. What? I mean, if I'm a founder, this is a red flag for me. This looks like we could be vulnerable here. Tell us about this.
Yeah, no, the thing is that what happens is there are many students that are in a situation where, like, especially international students or students that move away from their parents, like they're in a situation where sometimes either the student loans that doesn't hit on time, or for international students that use like international payments, sometimes it takes days before, like let's say your parents send you the money on the 25th, on the 27th, and rent hits the money hits your account maybe on the 3rd or the 4th. With a typical landlord, what happens is if the rent is due on the 31st or on the 1st of the month, you're late. And every day that you're late, you have to pay your fee. And that also plays into your rental history. And even when you're looking for reference check. But what we know is that many students, as a student, you won't make the decision to go to university if you can't afford it. And as a student, as international students, me being international students, many international students are able to sort of like provide like months ahead of rent payments. Student loans also help you cover for that rent. And so why would it be that because you're a couple of days late on rent that you have to be penalized for that? And so we work with the students because we were students ourselves, and there have been times, the rough times, where you're like, oh, today I can't really afford rent. Like today I can make the rent payment, but I know that the money is coming in. And so we work with the students to be like, you know what? We can help you out because life happens, but make sure that within the next couple of days you pay back that rent. So that, again, taking away that stress that they face, so that they can focus on what they're here to do, which is, success academically.
Yeah, no kidding. I still have a million questions for the two of you, but we haven't even really said hello to Jolene yet, who's been hearing about both of your businesses. Jolene, you've run in a couple examples of what you and your team are producing at the Gummy Nutrition Lab. This is health and wellness. This is your space.
Yeah, right. So, thanks, Ryan. My company is Gummy Nutrition Lab, and we actually design and manufacture nutraceutical gummies right here in Edmonton, and we use 80% Alberta-grown ingredients. So there's only a few things we can't get here because there's also water in there, so don't forget. But everything else is like really local, and so we have just launched several products. Our first products are out of the gate, and we're really happy, and we're out to market. Yeah.
Congratulations. So can people, like, what stage are you at as a founder right now? What stage is the business at? If someone's intrigued, and as you tell us more about your business, and they say, I want to go pick some of this up right now, can they find it in stores today?
So we're just at a few stores right now. We have some pharmacies and health food stores carrying our products, and we have it online and also on Amazon as well.
I've heard some of my friends work in the health and wellness space, not specifically exactly what you're doing, but I know that people that work in that space see almost unlimited potential from, a customer base, from revenue possibilities, but there's also a lot of people playing in that space. How do you differentiate yourself or set yourself apart?
Well, really, that's our biggest challenge, to be honest. So there is a lot of players in the market, including very, very big ones. So getting the word out about what we are and what we do and how ours is different is really like our number one thing we do right now. So we come on, shows like yours and tell people all about it, and let them know that, buying from a Canadian manufacturer means that it's registered with Health Canada, that we have very, very high standards for manufacturing and stability in our products. So. Can
I ask you about the psychology of the gummy?
Sure.
Because it's like, you notice, I want to be clear, your company has nothing to do with cannabis, correct?
Right.
But
yes.
I look at a lot of people in my orbit, people that I know that are not inclined, and I'm not going to ask you to talk about, smoking weed. But I noticed that there's people that would never smoke a joint ever. They're not going to hit a pipe. They're not going to smoke a bong, but they'll eat gummies no problem before concerts or going to their kid's soccer game or whatever it is. Here you are, from a health and wellness standpoint, a nutrition standpoint, putting gummies out as well. It seems to me like the gummy is this like preferred delivery device for almost anything. I mean, I'm sure that there's kids' medicines that are in gummies. Is there like a psychological affinity that humans have to the gummy?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's basically, delivering it in a candy format. So
Tastes amazing.
It tastes great. So, no, definitely, it is really overtaking the natural health products space. Absolutely, 100%. If we can get it in a gummy in an effective dosage, that's really gold. So that's really what we specialize in, is that we can really put more in than other people are doing. So really the drawback of a gummy is generally that you can only put so much in. And so the limitation for quite a long time was around 200 milligrams. So in a typical pill, you can get about 1 gram of an active in, and so you'd have to take 5 gummies to get the same amount as a pill. So one of our flagship products that we've brought to market is this creatine monohydrate gummy. So creatine, the dosage is 2 to 5 grams. So if you can imagine, you'd have to take quite a few gummies if there's only 200 milligrams. But we've been able to put 1 gram into each gummy and still make it taste really great. Yeah, I mean, that's really, you're right. It is taking over, and there's a good reason, because it's not just taking market share away from people who are already taking pills. It's opening up new markets. So people who wouldn't typically take, a pill or a capsule or even put it in a drink, they'll take a gummy. It's so much more convenient, less messy,
Totally.
Portable.
Who is your target customer?
Well, we do have different target markets for different products, so depending what it is. But our target customer is basically anyone who's interested in promoting their health, like doing stuff in addition to eating well. And it's a huge market. You're right. It's really massive. And, depending on the product, we have to narrow it down. And what you're saying about other people in this space, there is a lot of noise in the space in terms of not being effective or not having as much in there as stated on the label. And that's something that if you're buying from a Canadian manufacturer, you can be pretty much assured that it's actually what's in there is in the product. And there's
so much stuff being sold online that's source unknown, isn't there?
I don't know if it's necessarily source unknown, but because we're regulated by Health Canada, we actually are a subset of the drug regulations. A lot of people don't know that. They just think, anybody can put anything out, but it's actually not true. So for a product, when we make it, we have to test it for the amount that's in there when we make it. Halfway through the shelf life and at the end of shelf life, it has to be within 80% of what's on the bottle. So if the product can't degrade, has to often be over, you have to actually put more in at the beginning to make sure you meet the spec at the end. So if you buy from a Canadian manufacturer, but as Canadians, we can buy from Amazon.com, and those are products that are made, they're coming from the US, and we don't always know if they're going to be as compliant.
Yeah, to put it gently.
Yeah,
no kidding. Okay, I have a million questions, but when we come back, I want to ask you all about the hurdles and the challenges and the sort of the bad days of business and how you overcame those. As we hang out with our founders, how cool is this? Sarah from My Fertility Labs, Jolene from Gummy Nutrition Lab, and Jean Bruce from Elev Homes. This conversation's happening with the support of some other businesses that know a thing or two about being founders and then growing those businesses up. A fella by the name of Frank Loveson, coming up on 70 years ago in Hinton, Alberta, saw the potential for a butcher shop. And wouldn't you know, over the years, he just kept adding more and more stores and opening more and more locations in different Alberta communities. And now Friesen Brothers is recognized as, among the most successful grocery stores, the most successful food stores in Canada. In fact, their Rabbit Hill location in South Edmonton won the gold medal last year from the Canadian Federation of Independent Grocers, making it the best food store in the country, period. Since then, they've opened their West Edmonton Glenora location, and they're just getting started. We're getting your emails about a Friesen Brothers in Calgary. We're applying gentle pressure to our friends at Friesen Brothers. Quick note, if you're going to be doing some gardening this weekend, the Friesen Brothers garden centers are now open with Alberta-grown plants, shrubs, and peat moss, which means it's perfect for our climate. You can learn more by checking out friesen.com/garden center. Another business leader in our community is Cam from California Closets. California Closets is a family-owned business that is doing some of the best work in closet design. And you know what? We've loved the customer testimonials that we've received. We got that one from Beverly a short time ago, and Beverly told us about she thought California Closets was out of her price range. She wasn't sure that she could afford them, but she heard us talking about California Closets on the show, so she requested that free consultation. Long story short, Beverly found that California Closets quote came in as the most reasonable, plus she gets the lifetime guarantee. We love getting emails like that. The team at California Closets takes every project personally. They can work with your budget. It all starts with that free consultation at californiaclosets.ca. And I know that because of the subject matter, what we're talking about today, we're going to have a lot of younger audience members checking out this show. You're inspired. You know that you've got a ton of potential and promise. You just need to get moving in the right direction. May we direct you to athabascau.ca. That's where you'll find Canada's Open University. That's Athabasca University with world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. It means if you're helping out your folks at home, or maybe with the family business, maybe you're caring for younger siblings, maybe you're caring for your grandparents, it could be that financially you're the breadwinner for the family and you can't be at university 9 to 5 Monday to Friday. The AU advantage is that it's all customized for what works for you. You can check out financial supports and other excellent reasons why the AU advantage is a thing at athabascau.ca. Hanging out with 3 business founders, including Sarah Harper with My Fertility Labs. I appreciate you sharing the very personal nature of what got you started with this specific venture. Aside from the significant and obvious personal challenges that you were experiencing at the time, what have been some of the business challenges that you've had to overcome early in the inception of My Fertility Labs?
So that's a really fantastic question. And I think that we really need to think about just the public healthcare system that we all love so much here in Alberta and across Canada, which is really very beneficial. But when we think about fertility care, the fact that it isn't covered actually really just makes it a very challenging business to bring forward. And I'll give you an example. We need to have a lab to run these blood tests for fertility and also for semen samples as well. But when you think about the labs that exist, those are public labs. So when we have to work with those public labs, but as a private company. And it is very challenging to do that. So what we've found is it is actually easier to find a lab partner in the US to ship samples there than it is to work with a Canadian partner to run home blood test samples.
Really?
And that is mind-blowing to us. Yes. Yeah. And we're still very committed to launching here first in Canada because there is no other company doing this and because the care is so essential. But ultimately, it's just mind-blowing that this is the case for many health tech companies, that it's easier to launch in the US than it is in Canada. And I think changes need to be made.
Yeah. So why do you think that? Do you think that there's COVID obviously went a long way, and particularly in the province of Alberta, as we take a look at a super lab that was funded and then defunded and not built, and then provinces, let alone the country. I know that there's been a conversation about Canada having more resources to develop things vaccines were the conversation at the time, but you could apply the principle to a million different applications, including yours. I think more and more people felt that as Canada was more reliant than we felt comfortable with on other countries, that we should be doing more of this at home. But there is a hesitation, probably in part because you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, if obviously, or billions. Do you think that you'd also have a hurdle to overcome or a hill to climb convincing government that public funds should be going toward things like fertility resources? Is that a tough sell politically?
I think that the political mood is actually changing when it comes to fertility care. And as an example, in Ontario and now most recently BC, the first round of IVF is covered. So I think that further changes are on the horizon. And it is a hard sell to the government. It's hard to get them to move and to make change, especially quickly, which is needed. But I think that we are close to that point. And I think the more voices that raise up just drawing attention to this issue, the more likely it is to happen. And there's actually a study in 2022 into people that have self-diagnosed PCOS. And the reason they're self-diagnosed is because GPs do not know enough conditions like PCOS to make these diagnoses. And what they found is that the vast majority of these people were not receiving adequate care. They had many unwanted symptoms. Like PCOS causes like unwanted weight gain, hair thinning, sometimes facial hair growth, and mood swings, and a whole host of other symptoms. And the problem is that they're not able to get proper treatment through their GPs despite coming forward with these symptoms. And the reason why is actually because it starts in the universities. Universities aren't teaching enough about specifically women's cycles, but also just fertility in general. And so the problem starts there, and that's what we're looking to solve by actually providing clinicians that are trained in reproductive medicine that actually know enough to provide ongoing care.
Are we talking about polycystic ovary syndrome, by the way, just so I know?
Yes.
Okay, I Googled it. I'm one of those that don't know enough about it, but that's why I'm sitting here. You have me as a captive audience. I'm starting to feel like we have health ministers at the provincial and federal level. I mentioned our filmmakers roundtable where we had a similar conversation. The producer of a film called The Wounds Within, I'm not sure if you've heard about it. It won Best Alberta Documentary at Northwest Fest just a couple of weekends ago. But she was like banging on the same table that you're sitting at, and she says that women's health concerns, she says there's evidence. I think she referenced, Johnny, do you remember it was a study out of like Boston or University of Montreal or something like that on the East Coast? Remember she was saying that there's like there's statistical evidence that women have a tougher time having their health concerns taken seriously. I feel like there should be a health minister, and then there should maybe be like a women's health minister. You know what I mean? It just sort of, do you feel that there's a groundswell that at least the awareness is there that there are some insufficiencies?
I would definitely agree with you. And I think that it is needed to have those people in government that are advocating specifically for women's health rights. And that is what this is. Fertility care is a health right, and it should be covered. And so ultimately we are advocating for that. And we have some exciting discussions actually coming up with members of government that's as much as I'll disclose, but we're looking to make some progress there.
Okay. If you'd like to break any news on the show, that's totally fine with us. We're totally okay with that. Jean Bruce, what was one of the big challenges or hurdles that when was Elev founded? This is relatively recent, right?
So the launch was relatively recent. So we launched it about, I think it was last summer.
Yeah. Coming up on a year.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. But founding itself is actually pretty interesting. It started out of university. So we started about 4 years ago, back in 2020. And that's when we sort of like started having the idea of like putting something together, putting a solution together, and just going out and test it to see if there's something that students would actually be interested in. And so when we started the project, it was more of like a side project because I was still in school and my other co-founders were still in school. And we also had like part-time jobs and all of this going on. And so we didn't put as much, I guess, energy into it in the beginning. But what happened over time is that it actually started picking up, and we had more demand for the service that we're providing. We figured, oh, whoa, snap, this is actually getting bigger than what we thought. And so we started putting more effort in, and over time, like refining the product, refining the app and the services that we're providing. And then we were like, we launched a beta to get it tested out, and then last summer we opened it up to the public to get it to make sure that we can help as many students as possible. And like right now we're pretty much like based out of Edmonton, and so helping as many students as possible, and we're working with universities as well to help their students find housing off campus. And
which I would imagine the universities help you on the marketing front, right? I mean, they're sending business your way, so to speak, which is great.
Yeah. And we also like the vision is that we really want to help their students as well find housing off campus. I'm pretty sure you've heard about it. I think it was with like the recent changes that happened with regard to immigration. Like there's been like a cap on how many international students can come into the country, because what's happening is there are many students that come in, but the mission get accepted, but they don't have a place to stay. And it's actually pretty intense down in Ontario, whereby like the ratio of students that are coming in is higher than the one that of houses that are available. And so everyone here pretty much knows that like rents are on the rise, and as a student you can't necessarily afford those rent prices. And as a student as well, you're not competing not just against other students, but you're competing against like professionals that have a full-time job,
totally,
rental history, credit history. And so it makes it you pretty much like pushed out of like the different resources that are available. And so one thing that we're really pushing for is making sure that the houses that are out there, the ones that are available on the platform, are as affordable as possible for students.
How do you do that? So just so I understand, because you you have sort of like two feeders
Yeah.
into your business, right? You've
Yeah.
got the students that are looking for housing, and then you've got the people that own the houses or that
Exactly.
manage those properties, so to speak.
Yeah.
I can 100% understand why a student would subscribe to your service or
Yeah.
use your service.
Yeah.
Do they subscribe, or is it free for the student? How does that work?
So how it works is that there's a fee that's paid monthly, but then the student pays for what they see. So whenever the listing is on the platform, whatever price they see is what they pay. Now we charge a monthly rent, a monthly fee that's sort of like taken out whenever the rent is paid, and it's taken out on both the students and the landlord.
I see.
But we make it as affordable as possible. And how we do it is that on the landlord side, we actually pitch the students in the sense that we have great tenants and we have students that are going to come in, they're going to pay the rent, and they're going to make sure that your property is well kept, is well maintained. And we are going to do the work to make sure that everything goes as smoothly as possible on the student side.
Okay.
And we tell the student the same thing, that, hey, we're going to help you find a great property that's going to, where you're going to stay while you attend university. But we also need you to make sure that rent is paid on time and you maintain the property, because the reason why many landlords are not necessarily comfortable renting out to students because of the stigma, right? As a student,
Keg parties.
Exactly. See, you party a lot. You're gonna have your friends over, loud. You can't afford to pay rent, and so many landlords choose to shy away from students. But you'd be surprised that many students actually are just looking for a place to crash, because 90% of the times is spent in classes or at the library,
or at their two jobs.
Oh, at the two jobs, exactly, right?
Yeah, I get it. So I get why the students would use it, but what's the benefit of the landlord? Why would the landlord use your service? If I have a place and my mortgage is going up and my property taxes are going up and my utilities are going up, the last thing I'm going to do is cut somebody a break. I need to try to cover my costs. So why am I, as a property owner, going to work with Elev?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We get that a lot from property owners. And one thing that we do is we have this program that we recently launched. It's called the Host Guarantee. And the way the Host Guarantee works is that it guarantees every landlord that the rent will be paid on time every month at the same time. So whether the rent is due on June at the end of the month, at the beginning of the month, is guaranteed to be paid. The second thing is that we actually help them. Let's say, for example, they have a tenant and for whatever reasons it doesn't work out. One thing that we do is we have this protection that for about 45 days, rent is covered. So while there's sort of like, let's say for example, the tenant moves out, while we're looking for the other tenants, we make sure that there's no break in their cash flow. And we help them sort of like covering the rent until they find the next tenant for the next 45 days. And we have, recently we even like got another email from a customer that we have great customer service in the sense that we have a hotline that's open 24/7. And so whenever there's any issue that the landlord experiences with the tenants, we're sort of like ready for them to help them
Yeah, it
out.
sounds like, I don't know if I want to say labor intensive, but your model is not something that can just run with an algorithm.
Yeah.
It's not like an eBay or something like that where it's just like it punches in da-da-da-da-da. It's like a personal thing where you're like kind of like selling the idea of the tenant or convincing the landlord or putting people's mind at ease or troubleshooting or like there's a human element to this.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of human element, and it's something that this is something that's also reflected in the team as well, in the sense that we try to be as personal and as personable as possible. Because one thing that we realize is the big guys, they have the platform, they have the technology, they have all of that. But one thing that we really want to show the student and the landlord is that we're here for you. You know, like as a student, especially as a student, when you're moving out for your parents' basements or you're moving out of the country, there is no one. Like, you're just here by yourself. And so we want to show you that, like, hey, look, the time gets tough, it gets challenging, but we're here to support you through that process. Same thing as well on the landlord side, in the sense that, of course, they have all the resources available, but because some landlords are used to deal with non-students, it's a little bit challenging to understand how students proceed. And so we're here to sort of like advocate on behalf of the students to the landlord, and also advocate on behalf of the landlords to the students to make it so that both have the best experience while using your services.
Same deal here. This guy's face just beaming when you talk about I love this. I mean, that's kind of part of the thing, though, isn't it? When you're working for yourself, when you're using your money or money that investors have kicked into a project, when it's sink or swim, you approach your business so much differently. I mean, I've been in both spots, right? I've worked for multi-billion-dollar, big, huge broadcast giants, and now when we work for ourselves, I'll tell you, there's more hustle. There's more jump in your step, right? And I see equal enthusiasm from you you, Jolene, when you're talking about Gummy Nutrition Lab. What was like one of the, by the way, how long ago did the business like hang its shingle, so to speak? Like how long have you been around?
Well, we've actually been around almost 2 years now because the process of setting up plant and getting all the equipment and figuring out how to make it takes a while. So, I mean, all of that did take a bit of time, and that's why just this year we're finally launching our products. And one of the ways that we were able to do that and bootstrap it was really because we've taken on co-manufacturing, so we do make some products for other people. We also do contract R&D as well for companies. So that kind of
Can you tell us about, give us an example of something you might be doing? Or?
I can't talk too much about it, but what we really specialize in is doing things other people can't. So I myself am a food scientist, but I also have 4 other food scientists that are working with us.
Cool.
So it makes up, actually, to be honest, most of our company. So we're still pretty small. But
I just watched that new Seinfeld movie. I can't remember what it was. So you have people that know how to like take cereal flakes and keep them from getting soggy, right? Like that's what.
Yeah, that's probably something we can do. Yeah, that's true.
Just being silly, but I think the field of food science is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, people forget like everybody eats every single day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's the biggest industry in the world is food because. Just for that simple reason is that nobody can go without eating, and making food that's healthy and stays fresh and people actually want to eat is just really important.
What was one of the big challenges that you've either overcome or maybe that you're staring down right now?
Well, I think, definitely, when you're in this sort of entrepreneur state, it's always the challenge that's right in front of your face right now. That's always the biggest one. Just like raising a kid, you forget about all the bad crying part. But right now, really our biggest challenge is getting into the hearts and minds of all of the customers and letting them know what we're doing and what we're making, because we're really true to our product. We really put a lot of heart in making it, and we think it's really great. So we want people to understand that and know that. But going back to what you were speaking with Sarah was about COVID, and this is where this all kind of really started, was that, me and my husband during COVID were like, we can't believe there's no companies in Canada that can make a vaccine. This is crazy. Like, why are we all sitting here and there's nobody making this? And so we thought, okay, you know what? People need people like us. Canada needs people like us who are willing to go and create manufacturing plants that are Health Canada certified that can make stuff. Because, if it's needed, there's people like us that can go and, we can figure it out. We have right now a Health Canada certified plant that can make stuff, and we're making it and selling it right now.
What's it been like? I'm an investor in a private business that has a Health Canada license, and there are a lot of hoops to jump through. There's a lot of monitoring, and I don't think anybody would change that, because that's kind of the whole point of being Health Canada certified, is the peace of mind that comes with it. How many layers of added challenge? I mean, you look like you don't want to answer the question because, but that factors in, right? Like, that's a pretty significant thing to be certified by Health Canada.
It's massively significant because there's not a lot of plants out there in Canada. It's actually very, very few, and that's how we started, because we had gone out for a quote, because we never planned on getting into manufacturing. We're just going to have someone else make it for us, and we just couldn't find anybody. So I actually started in meat processing, believe it or not. So the regulations for meat processing are very strict as well. And I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to, apply what I learned back then to, this license. And I just actually did all the licensing myself. I just sat down. I actually rented a space in a co-working space and just sat down and wrote it and started from the beginning and got it to the end. And I don't even still know how I did it, but I did.
Yeah, wow. So the co-working space, that's always interesting to hear, like literally from the ground up. Like you pay a monthly fee and you get into it, you get a chair at a table, but you're surrounded by other people, right? You hear about these groups and these networks, like Edmonton Unlimited would be an example. You can check out edmontonunlimited.com, and they've got a ton of like programs and workshops and those types of resources. How important is that for you to have other people to bounce ideas off and to lean on and to, sort of glean that inspiration from?
It's almost like one of the most important things. It's so important. I did the Edmonton Unlimited program with Sarah, and it's so lonely when you're an entrepreneur and people just don't understand what you're going through, because the struggles are really, really inside you, because you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get to this next step. And there's people there to discuss. They might not be at that same stage, or maybe they're before or after, and they're just someone to discuss going through that. And it's so critical. I'm just so like we're so blessed that we have these in our community for sure.
What do you remember about that program?
The program was really just game changing for us through the Velocity program at Edmonton Unlimited. They actually pair you up with a mentor, sometimes, but not always in a similar space, but they have this experience. So they're able to look at your journey and say, based on where you're at, what do you think the next steps are be? And they can really kind of prod you in the right direction. And there's also that element of talking to other co-founders. And when you look at individuals making a decision versus group decisions, the group almost always makes a better collective decision than the individual acting alone. And I think that is the true strength of groups like Edmonton Unlimited, is that there's a group of experts and other founders that have maybe gone through a same version of the challenge you're experiencing, even if it's in a different industry, or they might just give you ideas that you had never thought of before.
How about you? Was it important for you? Like, were you, because it's interesting, you're playing in a space, placing people in housing, advertising, real estate listings or rental listings. That's a big space to play in. There's a lot of big fish there.
Yeah. There are a lot of big fish, and I think it was important for us to sort of like understand from the beginning that when there are a lot of big fishes, you sort of have to like pick that one specific type of fish to go after,
Sure.
focus on that, and then sort of like grow from there, right? Because one thing that we did, and I'm actually very glad Edmonton Limited is brought up, is that we also went through different programs from Edmonton Limited, and the last one that we went through was the Propel program, where it was very important for us to sort of like narrow down who we're going after when it comes to students and also when it comes to the property owners, to make sure that we are able to build a proper a solid value proposition, and make sure that we sort of like get to a solution that makes sense for the users that we're going for. And so making sure that we sort of like understand, okay, who are the players that we want to go after, like the low-hanging fruits, focus on them, and then grow from there.
Love it. Okay, I'm going to put all of you on the spot as we wrap here. The context of this, the Founders Roundtable, I want to ask you the best piece of advice you ever received. And I'll go first, okay? Because I'd never led a business before, ever. I'd always worked for somebody else. It was a luxury that I very much enjoyed. I was not responsible for anybody else. I didn't have to do anything else, and then I had to figure it out. And some bumps along the way, right? Like that's kind of part of being an entrepreneur, part of being a small business owner. And my buddy Marshall, who works in financial services, and he's the CEO at his company, said to me, if you're going to lead a business and lead it successfully, it's important to have a team. And so here's what he told me. He said, only do what only you can do, and leave the rest to everybody else. Only do what only you can do, and delegate everything else. And that's something that I think about, honestly, on a weekly basis, even though Johnny will tell you I'm terrible at delegating. But still, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received, Jolene?
Well, this is interesting because we were just talking about this recently. One of my professors at the university, who's teaching this entrepreneur course, and he has all these students who are like, oh, I want to make a ton of money building a company and donate money to charity. He said, listen, the best thing you can do for your community is to create 5 jobs for people who didn't have them before. And I've never forgotten it, and it's been like almost 20 years now. And it was a brilliant thing that he said, and I've never forgotten it.
I think that's great. How about you?
Yeah, no, I think the best piece of advice I've gotten is probably came from my dad. Someone that I admire a lot, and like he's a very hardworking person. And I remember he's always said something like growing up. I never really understood it until like recently when he said it again, and he said something along the lines of, It's only impossible if you believe that it is impossible, right? In the sense that unless you put your mind to it and you believe you can make it happen, it won't happen. And so it's pretty much like once you've convinced yourself that it's not happening or it's impossible, you've pretty much lost the battle. And so going from like being able to like understand that it's a mindset thing, like having the right mentality and going for it has been really, 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 really great for me. And so, yeah, it's only possible if you believe it is. Otherwise,
I love that.
You can make it happen.
Yeah, I love that. I heard somebody say once, if you believe something is impossible, you're right.
Exactly.
And if you believe something's possible, probably you're right as well, right? Yeah, no, that's great. How about you?
So that's a great question. So my great piece of advice also comes from my father. So he's actually a CEO and co-founder as well. So I actually am able to bounce a lot of ideas off of him and get some really wonderful advice. But he said, just be incredibly careful about the team members you choose, like review their backgrounds, get to know them, and that is ultimately the group that's going to help realize this vision. So they need to have both the same vision and also the same drive. So I'm very fortunate to have a wonderful team behind me, and there's actually a journey that all founders go through, and it's foramine, storamine, noramine, and perforamine. So that first step, foramine, when you bring your founders together, and then the next step, storamine, is when, ideas you kind of throw things at the wall and you might have some disagreements, but ultimately it's how do you resolve that and how do you move forward and get to that next stage of noramine where things are kind of normalized. But then when you're a startup, the very next stage is to scale. So that's when you're really performing. And ultimately the startup journey is about having the limited resources of a small business, but trying to perform like you are a large organization. And so ultimately, if you have the right team behind you, the right resources, then you have a much higher likelihood of success.
I love that. Your dad's got to be proud of you. Your dad's got to be proud of you, I would imagine. Your family proud of you. You guys got a lot going on here. Yeah. And I just want to thank you on behalf of our audience. I love this. You know what else I love is that the three of you have not been around for 15 years. You're not on the Fortune 500 list yet. We're still talking to you. It may not technically be startup phase. But as far as I can remember off the top of my head, the oldest business in existence that we're talking about today is ours at 3.5 years, and we feel like babies. Or 2 years right here, 1 year right here, right? I mean, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so this is still may not. Do you consider yourselves in startup phase right now, or no? Probably not. Or do you? Yeah.
I think you're startup until you make it big.
Fair enough. That's it. You're startup until you're retired young. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I love it. Well, listen, but it's just like the passion is evident. The optimism is there. All three of your faces light up when you talk about your business. And I know I'm inspired. I guarantee the audience is learning something too. So thanks for hanging out with us this morning on this Founders Roundtable. We loved the idea, and we were grateful that all three of you accepted the invitation.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. You've been hearing from Jolene Ali, who's the CEO of Gummy Nutrition Lab, Jean Bruce Koua, who's the co-founder of Elev Homes. I saw somebody in the live chat said, "Oh, thank goodness it wasn't a big developer." I don't think they knew what to expect from Elev Homes. But look at this, finding affordable housing for students. Yeah. And Sarah Harper hanging out with us, the CEO of My Fertility Labs. You can check out our show notes for more information and links directly to these three businesses. And if something that has been said here at this roundtable has resonated with you, maybe you're a student, maybe you're a business leader, maybe you're somebody who saw early success, sold, and now you're providing mentorship for others. We'd love to pick your brain, so to speak. Our email inbox is always open to talk at ryanjesperson.com. As a matter of fact, we're going to go there in just a minute, courtesy of our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. You know what I'm talking about. But if there's an observation you have about being a founder, about being an innovator, a business leader, something that you learned maybe the hard way, we'd love to hear about it. We'll include it on a future episode of Real Talk. Thanks to the three of you, and have an amazing weekend. This conversation has been made possible, and this is probably occurring to you as we're talking about our Real Talk partners. Here's another business that started with a guy in a truck. Jake Kubisky is his name. Yeah, he was an oil field electrician. But he couldn't help but notice what was happening with Canada's green energy revolution, with sustainable energy. And so Jake recruited one of his best buddies. They got themselves their own truck, and they started selling and installing solar panels. And thus, Kubi Renewable Energy was born. Over less than a decade, this company has grown to Western Canada's largest by-volume solar panel installer. And that means, of course, that they're hiring right now. They've got 4 offices, so to speak, proudly headquartered out of Edmonton, but they're down in Calgary, Lethbridge, and Kamloops, serving BC, Yukon, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and beyond. If you're an experienced electrician, an apprentice, a salesperson, office manager, if you work in HR, Kubi would love to hear from you. You can check out the careers link at kubienergy.ca to learn more about what they're doing across Western Canada. Residential properties, commercial properties, industrial properties, farms, and more. Our friends at Complete Care Restoration, guess what? You picking up on a common theme here? A family-owned business that started 25 years ago, operating out of a garage. They've since grown to one of the most trusted names in the country when it comes to disaster restoration. Complete Care Restoration has been restoring properties and perhaps even more importantly, rebuilding peace of mind for people across the province of Alberta. And they're ready to respond 24/7. Whether it's hazardous material removal that you're looking for, emergency repair services, flood or fire damage, mold or asbestos removal, Complete Care Restoration does it all. You can find them online at completecarerestoration.ca. And wanted to direct your attention to pathwaysalliance.ca, Canada's oil sands on a path to reach net zero emissions from operations. And it's all hands on deck with this. It means that the 6 largest producers in Canada's oil sands are working with provincial and federal governments to get this carbon capture and storage plan into fruition, to make it a reality. They know that global energy demands are changing, that the world is looking for responsibly produced oil, and Alberta can provide that. But to reach the goal, they need to collaborate with each other, with communities, with governments. You can read more about that net zero initiative by checking out pathwaysalliance.ca. Do you feel inspired? You are a small business owner, John Hicks. People know
yeah,
you, but
I guess.
Infamous. What do you mean you guess? So with Infamous
so are you.
Entertainment, you work in entertainment. You're obviously hustling on the evenings and on the weekends. And are you the type that like has leaned on other people in certain spaces to get business ideas?
Of course,
You've learned some tough lessons, I would imagine,
Yeah,
just like I have, and
Yeah.
grown the business from there.
Yeah, I mean, everybody kind of piggybacks off everyone. You get inspiration from other people. I think that's the great thing about today is like, and especially since the pandemic, people are they're coming out of their shell. They're starting their own business. They're saying, you know what? I have time now. That's what happened during the pandemic. And yeah, it's all about, I think imitation is the highest form of flattery.
Yeah.
I see people do it to me. I do it to other people, you know, and I think of like with social media nowadays, like we see something, we're like, oh man, this is really good. Look at this person. They are doing it right. And you take inspiration from that, and everyone learns a little and grows a little.
Yeah.
I'm just sampling some
the
of the
Gummy. They brought in a whole bunch of samples. I'm like, I know you and I are.
We're gonna have a good weekend.
We're going to
We're
improve
gonna
our
have a nice-
we're going to improve our health and wellness, and we can do it by chomping on
have a
gummies.
great weekend.
Yeah, there
Yeah,
you go.
this
I love I just love those types of stories of success that's homegrown. I mean, how about Jean Bruce as well? Like you come in as an international student and then build a business based on the challenges you personally experience. I mean,
So
Sarah's
necessary
doing the same
right now.
thing with her fertility challenges, the heartbreak of losing a pregnancy, and now I mean, like she is motivated when talking about her business, right? I mean, how many stories have we seen, success stories, where somebody saw something, they saw an opportunity, or they saw a deficiency, or they saw something that could be improved, and they took it upon themselves to do it.
And that's a pretty selfless one John's doing too, because that's like, this is the thing everyone's talking about right now, housing, but especially for people who are coming here and they want to get educated, but like, what do you do when there's nowhere to live, right?
Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy that I don't know this. I know this election is going to be based on it, but I've said this before, and I don't mean to be like, you know, doom and gloom, but I don't see where the answer is other than fast forward 5 years from now when a bunch of houses are built, right? So I don't know what to do
They're
about
trying
that.
to get shovels in the
But
ground.
it's
right
great
now,
that
but
someone
you're
like Jean is notices that and is helping people. Like the thing about like helping people, you know, get to the next month's rent, and because a lot of people right now, I think that's one thing Trudeau got right in the last month or two is bringing forth some of that policy to get people to get their credit rating just from having rent, because it's so hard to get your credit rating up to get a mortgage. I think it's great that some of that is being introduced.
It doesn't
now.
make any sense
if you
that
can make
people
your
would
rent
not have their credit rating improved by making their rent payment every
for
month.
years
I mean, that makes perfect
without
sense,
missing a
right?
payment, but you
Yeah.
can't get a mortgage. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I agree. And I wanted to acknowledge some other action that we saw in the chat. And the reason I didn't put it in front of this group, just because I didn't want the conversation to get sidetracked, but there were valid points being made. Some people were saying, I think it was Alberta Girl chimed in and said something about, you know, it's great to have international students, but, you know, we do think we need to keep spots open for Canadian post-secondary students that are having a tough time getting in. Availability, I mean, spots to get into university are decreasing. It's fast, and this is something we need to do a whole show on this, and we will. But I think it's an interesting conversation because you can make a compelling argument that we need to look after Canadian students and ensure that they have opportunities. But then you look at some of the funding cuts that post-secondary institutions are experiencing, and honestly, real talkers, like what is like one of the first things that everybody goes to when you talk about revenue streams for post-secondaries, it's international students.
Yeah.
You need to open up more spots for international students because they're basically going to subsidize or fund some of the post-secondary programs that Canadian students will be tapping into. But then you hear someone like Jean Bruce saying, who's like, here's a real name and a real face, okay? You just say international students, and then everybody assumes like, they're all from billionaire families in Hong Kong. That's not how it, that's not, that's not the reality. And he's saying, hey, I came here. Financially, it was very difficult. Logistically, it was very difficult. And I think it's so important to hear that international student experience. I also hear from the other side, parents that are saying, or young 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds that are saying, I would love to get into veterinary medicine, or I would love to get into finance, or like whatever they want to do.
Overloaded.
We could use a lot of nurses. We could use more teachers, right? But it's tough to get in.
Yeah.
And if you can get in, it's expensive. So
another discussion I heard on a radio show I won't mention is just space, like you're talking about. It's
wait, you listen to other radio shows, John?
Not only space, like in terms of in the class, but literally campuses are overrun. And right now there's portables, there's all these different institutions that are trying to make room for people. But like you just said, the catch is to make development and make campuses bigger and make permanent space, not just portables, because portables are temporary. We need foreign students coming because they fund that development. So again, we're in like this catch-22 of how are we going to figure this situation out, right?
Yeah, very well said. Wanted to put this on your radar. Our friends at the Discourse have a new episode out ahead of, they're going to be pushing one out next Thursday. They've announced who the guest is, right? I'm not scooping have they said, or should we maybe I'll hold it to myself?
No, go ahead. They announced it on the show.
Oh, they did. Yeah. Okay. So they got Premier Danielle Smith joining them next Thursday, and then they're going to take a summer break, just like the politicians do, right? They'll probably knock on fewer doors than the politicians will, but Cheryl and Erika have a new episode out of the Discourse. You can find it on YouTube, or you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. And the title of the episode, Forget Pride, Erika Has No Shame. And Erika Barootes and Cheryl Oates get into a conversation about Alberta's governing party, the United Conservative Party. You may have heard the UCP banned from Pride, and these two take it on in this new episode.
14 Pride organizations across Alberta, including Calgary Pride, have banned not only the Premier, but UCP MLAs and cabinet from participating in any of their celebrations or events this summer.
This group isn't doing anything but political grandstanding this and making this political. I mean, they released it as a news release.
What choice do they have?
Talking to the MLAs, did they? I know for a fact they didn't email UCP MLAs asking or telling them that they were not involved in this. They haven't asked for meetings. They didn't send this to the Premier of Alberta.
The UCP brought in a crazy policy that takes the rights away from people who these groups represent. Good on them for saying we are not just a group that holds celebrations. We are not just a group that puts on parades. We are a group that advocates for the people who are part of this community. And that is exactly what they're doing. They're pushing back. They're putting this in the headlines again to say, we're going to try to affect change.
Putting out a press release as opposed to saying we want meaningful conversations. To me, this tactic isn't saying we want meaningful conversations.
This is exactly what the government did when it rolled its policy out. It rolled its policy out and said we invite discussion on it. So if you don't like act first, ask for consultation later, go back to the government, because the duty to consult with the communities most affected does not lie with the community.
So
it lies with the government.
Sided with that, for the record. So are you saying two wrongs make a right? Because I don't think that
I'm saying one is a government. One is a government.
I think it's exactly doing maybe the opposite of, let's just say, benefit of the doubt. They're trying to get the government to come to the table with them. This is the exact opposite strategy. You're shitting on the government. You're disinviting them. What if they said, we don't want you to wear UCP if you want to come as an individual and celebrate? Like, you're saying you can't come to the celebration. And I think it gets away from the purpose of Pride.
It is not the job of the public to go seek consultation with the government.
Isn't that the whole purpose of having elected officials? You can write to them and talk to them. But
there's no one saying that hasn't been done.
You can crap on the government for how they've gone about it. Fine. I won't argue with that I think they could have done more consultation. But I also don't think that you can give a free pass to this group.
And I'll tell you right now, that is just that's a 2-minute and 10-second clip of about a 20-minute conversation that gets probably the most heated I've ever seen the two of them get. So if there was ever a show that would get you to listen, it's going to be this one. Go listen to the Discourse, the episode from yesterday.
Okay, good stuff. So, yeah, and for a refresher, for those of you that may not be aware, so Cheryl Oates was Rachel Notley's director of comms, director of communications for her entire tenure as premier, plus before and after. Erika Barootes, the founding president of the United Conservative Party. So they come at this from very different angles. Sometimes they find common ground, and sometimes they just absolutely don't.
They are friends, and they do respect each other.
Well, and that's what I like about the
gets
podcast.
Very heated.
It's what I like about the premise of it is, you know, what was that a real talker by the name of Spencer once wrote in, said, let's try to learn to disagree without being disagreeable. It doesn't mean you have to concede your point. You can find the Discourse wherever you get your podcasts, and of course you can subscribe to them on YouTube as well.
And I will say that Erika put out an update on what was it? So the Alberta government has invited the LGBTQS community to a series of roundtables, and this was after their show, and these requests were denied. And then Cheryl commented back, you can't say that's a sign of demonstrating collaboration or wanting to have the conversation, as you stated on our newest episode, and they linked to the episode. But if you go to this, things are getting heated on Twitter now. That's
weird.
I saw someone just comment now saying, I enjoyed Erika's roasting on Twitter yesterday. So this conversation bled out from their podcast, went on to Twitter. The Alberta government actually, I don't know if they heard it or, you know, I assume they're reaching out because they've been banned from these events, right? And then, Erika put up some updates, and then her comments are just going crazy right now. And I'm sure that this is all, right there.
Yeah, there you have it.
This is all going in a big circle from the podcast, so go check it out because it's I hate that this is the end of their season because I feel like it's just getting heated.
Just getting started.
Right?
That's the Discourse on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Before we get to the Flamethrower, before we fire that up, a shout out to those of you. We saw an amazing response after we mentioned this on our May 23rd episode. The Real Talk Golf Classic is coming up on June 20th. I would say had a panic attack because all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed. We're ready to rock June 20th at the Ranch. But if you go to the events link at ryanjesperson.com, click on the Real Talk Golf Classic presented by our friends at CWB Wealth. I had that moment yesterday when I went, this is going down in less than a month. Mm-hmm. So I had to go investigate yesterday and play the course, John. I had to go see the condition, the shape that the ranch is in. It is in beautiful condition.
Nice.
First round of the year, pal. I don't usually go on the record. I don't talk about my scores. But for a guy like me, just kind of like the weekend duffer, first round of the year, shot an 88. Not bad.
Whoa.
No big deal. Not bad. But more importantly, the improvements that they've made to their tee boxes, to their sand traps. They got that new green on, is it 14, I think? A beautiful new green. That dogleg right just plays perfectly to my slice. I love that hole. We're going to have so much fun. 3 shots at $100,000 on our holes in one. Plus, you can win a vehicle and so many other reasons to be there. Our premium door prizes, you should see a custom leather duffel bag worth $1,500 from Closed General. We're going to have Oilers tickets to give away. All of this in support of the Real Talk Julie Rohr Scholarship. We've got a couple of foursomes left. If you're interested in signing up a group to play, we can always use more volunteers. As a matter of fact, we're looking for a volunteer to sit at one of our hole-in-one holes. You're going to witness maybe even a hole-in-one. We had one last year. His name's Robert Cardinal. He had a 2-hop jarred out hole-in-one on hole 6, 165-yard hole-in-one. The only tragedy, last year, our holes-in-one were only worth $20,000. So Robert walked away with just $20,000. This year, we're hoping that somebody walks away with that cool $100K. If you'd like to sit in a lawn chair, sip on a lemonade, and serve as our witness, we could use more volunteers. You can send an email to golf@ryanjesperson.com. It's the Real Talk Golf Classic, Thursday, June 20th at the Ranch, a 2 p.m. shotgun start presented by our friends at CWB Wealth. I can't believe
one happened right behind us.
Right behind it. We heard
that's
it.
What was
the place
crazy
just absolutely exploded.
No way.
And you know who's not getting enough credit in this conversation? And it's hilarious and tragic that there was no prize for it. I mentioned Kubi, Jake Kubisky, the CEO of Kubi Energy. He had an albatross on 7, which is one hole past where the hole-in-one was. His group was about 180 yards out, and he hit an iron shot and put it in. And the albatross, which is 3 under par, is statistically more rare than a hole-in-one.
Wow.
Right? So we had a hole-in-one and we had an albatross within about 45 minutes of each other. And he comes up to me and he goes, albatross. I said, yeah, I heard. Like, a bunch of people witnessed it, saw it. Like, that's an absolutely insane thing to develop, especially at a tournament. And he's like, and Jake's such a good sport. He goes, what do I win? I'm like, absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing.
A pat on the back.
We might have to come up with an albatross prize for the
Sure.
but I mean, if we have 2 in 2 years, I don't even know what to say. I'm going to say that the hand of God is on this tournament. But all in support of our Real Talk Julie Rohr Scholarship, you can register today. Check out the events link at ryanjesperson.com. Courtesy of our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, they will be there at the Golf Classic with their dilly bar shooters. Yet another reason you don't want to miss it. Every single week as we wrap up our shows, we give you a chance to bring the heat, right? We're looking for your hot takes. And basically, we want to open up the floor for you to fire up your flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. These are all real emails to talk at ryanjesperson.com, including this one from Rob, Earmuffs Kids. Rob's all fired up. He says, deceptive fuckers. He says, I received an invitation to participate in a poll that was being conducted by the Federal Conservative Party about whether or not somebody wants Pierre Poilievre to be the next prime minister. So I took the poll. I was like, great. I think it's important that a poll, as it is euphemistically being called, offered by the party association itself, should hear from people who do not want Pierre Poilievre to be the next prime minister. So I had the ability to answer yes or no. So I answered no, and then I gave him my name, my phone number, and my email address. Oh, Rob. He says, and then after I clicked submit, I was taken to a page that thanked me for having signed a petition to show my support for Pierre Poilievre to become the next prime minister. What in the actual? Rob says in all caps. Now, typically, says Rob, I'm not this gullible, but if conservative.ca themselves is referring to this as a poll and not as a petition, don't you think there should be a bit more transparency? Anyway, says Rob as he signs off. What about this one from Steven after our conversation yesterday, talking about fighting in hockey, talking about why I think that it's necessary and why others necessarily don't agree? Well, Steven writes in and says, if hockey players don't get hit hard, if they're not going to fight anymore, then why the hell are we paying them millions of dollars? If there's no real threat to their brains, they should be going to school where their careers can start. What? He says, going to these games is not even worth it anymore cost-wise. Don't disagree, Steven. Says, sorry, not sorry on these issues. It's just rich kids playing the sport now. Anyway, that from Steven. And we also heard from Robyn, who says, fighting in hockey is like the spicy jalapeno in a nacho platter. Not everybody loves it, but it definitely adds a kick. Picture this. A player takes a cheap shot at your team's star. Without the possibility of a good old brawl, where's the justice? Enter the Enforcer, hockey's own version of Batman, ready to drop the gloves and restore order. Nothing revs up a crowd like two players throwing punches while trying to stay on their skates. It's like a dance-off, but with more dental appointments after. Nice, Robyn. Says fights can turn the tide of a game. That's true. Rally the team and fans alike, make it more than just a sport. It's an adrenaline-packed spectacle. Sure, there are necessary debates like the one on Real Talk about safety and sportsmanship, but sometimes you just need a little chaos to spice things up. That from Robyn. And what about this one from Dean? We'll call him Diener. He says, slow drivers in the passing lane is what I'd like to shine the spotlight on. Jespo says, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks to the DQs. They're like that one person, these slow drivers in the left lane at a buffet who stands in front of the shrimp and hums and haws and just won't move. Seriously, if you're going to drive like a sloth on vacation, do us all a favor and stay in the right lane, which is for you. The left lane is for passing, not for you to ponder life's mysteries, okay? If you see a line of cars behind you longer than a Black Friday checkout line, it's a sign. Move over. Think of it as doing your part to keep the road rage levels down and the flow of traffic smooth. So for the love of all things fast and furious, says Diener, slide to the right, and let the rest of us get to our destinations before we age a decade. That from Diener, who sent us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. The Flamethrower is presented Fridays right here on Real Talk by our friends at the DQs in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. Make sure that you cap off your picnic this summer with their brand new Picnic Peach Cobbler Blizzard Treat with world-famous DQ soft serve, peach topping, buttery cobbler pieces blended to absolute blizzard treat perfection. Make it a great weekend, friends. Thanks for liking and subscribing to Real Talk. Thanks for telling your friends and sharing our episodes. Thanks for the emails to talk@ryanjesperson.com. We'll see you again on Monday.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hicks.